This is our Tuesday update on Hurricane Idalia. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. Joined with me, my weather brother Sean Sublette. Sean, today is, if you think about golf, it's like moving day, right? This is where we see a lot of changes today, I believe, when it comes to Idalia.
Yeah, with Idalia, we expect this to be the day that the rapid intensification takes place. Some of that has already happened since first thing this morning. It's a strong category 1 system on its way to becoming a 2 by this afternoon, and will likely further strengthen right on through tonight up until landfall sometime on Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's gaining strength rapidly, and we are looking for a landfall somewhere between Panama City in Florida as well as Tampa, Florida here, likely on that big bend or that little curve part that you see in
hmm
Florida here. And then the storm is going to stall off the Atlantic coast this weekend. We're going to show you why that's going to happen as well. It's really going to create some nasty surf and rip currents on the southeast coast, really a lot of the east coast as we go into Labor Day weekend here. So, Sean, let's take a look through our satellite and show us what we have going on because it's not just Idalia. We have to remember that there is still another hurricane, a very strong hurricane in the Atlantic.
Yeah, Franklin is still a major hurricane there, a couple hundred miles away from Bermuda. Still looks like it's going to miss Bermuda, but Idalia is obviously the one we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 days with the biggest impacts closer to Florida and ultimately the rest of the Southeast. The specifics on Franklin, still a strong 130-mile-per-hour storm, but it's going to skirt Bermuda just off to the west side and then race back into the colder waters of the North Atlantic, but very likely remain a hurricane right on through Friday or Saturday before it gets into that colder water. But let's go back down to the Gulf Coast and take us through what Idalia is going to do, Joe.
Yeah, so Idalia right now, you can't see it on satellite, but there is actually an eye aloft. Sean was actually just talking to me about this before with the hurricane hunters. They're out there and they do see an eye. And when you see an eye, that's when the storm is, really getting its act together here. So right now, it's a category 1 hurricane, maximum sustained wind 85 miles an hour, moving north at 14 miles an hour. And those outer bands of clouds are already making it into Tampa and to places like Cedar Key. And you'll probably hear Cedar Key a lot over the next couple of days here. Let's take a look at
Yeah.
its path here. Going to strengthen into a major category 3 hurricane and make landfall in that big bend of Florida. We're talking about Cedar Key, Cross City, Perry. Those are all towns that we're watching for a direct landfall. From there, it's going to cross through Florida, likely into southeastern Georgia. Savannah is probably going to be in the middle of this here. And then we have to see what happens as we go into Thursday. Is it going to stay in the lowlands of South Carolina, or is it actually going to stay on the eastern side of the cone and go back out into sea where there are really warm waters there as well? Either way, what we'll say is we do know it's going to go to the east and then just kind of stall right around Bermuda right into Labor Day weekend. So we're going to be talking about Idalia likely for another week before this really gets out of here. Couldn't be longer than that. But the main impacts are going to be in the next 48 hours as it does make landfall in Florida here. Taking a look at just some quick notes, Sean, you were talking about this could be a rapidly intensifying storm. And yes,
Yeah.
that is an actual weather term.
Yeah, I mean that the term kind of gets tossed around like so many other weather terms, but when we say a storm is undergoing rapid intensification, that's something very specific, meaning that the strongest wind speeds in the storm increase at least 35 miles per hour within 24 hours. So another way to think about that, basically they're going up 2 categories within 24 hours. A 1 becomes a 3, a 2 becomes a 4, all in the span of 24 hours. And part of the reason for this, Joe, that warm, if not hot ocean water, man.
Hey, listen, I love my water 87 degrees, so I'm a fan of it. But it's not good when you're talking about the potential for hurricanes to strengthen quickly here. A lot of places in the Gulf. I mean, in fact, I would say almost all the Gulf at this point between 85 to about 92 degrees. So the conditions are ripe there for rapid intensification. There's not a lot of wind shear or change in wind direction with height that usually rip apart these storms. Sean,
Mhm.
take us through the warnings we're seeing both with the hurricanes as well as the storm surge.
Yeah, so we'll go to these 2 graphics real quick. Everything you see in red, that's a hurricane warning. And this is an important thing to remind everyone. The cone is important, It's not the only thing. Impacts are way outside the cone. That's why all of metropolitan Tampa Bay is under a hurricane warning, even though it's not right in the core of the cone. It's still going to be close enough. There's going to be substantial amount of strong winds and coastal overwash, what we think of as flooding or storm surge. Specifically, the warnings for the storm surge are highest in that Big Bend area near Cedar Key. So north of Tampa and east of Panama City and Apalachicola. That's where the water is very likely going to be 8 to as much as 12 feet above ground as this thing makes landfall on Wednesday morning. Not to say that there's not going to be high water coming into Tampa Bay, because there will. The storm surge forecast last we checked looks like about 4 to 6 feet of water above ground across a lot of metropolitan Tampa Bay. So it is still going to be very dangerous in these coming 36 hours or so, perhaps even a little bit beyond that, because of course we've got the water, but we've also got the winds coming on shore. Walk us through that, Joe.
Yeah, Sean, and I just want to say something too real quick. We also have the
Yeah,
super moon on Wednesday. So
that's
we have
right.
high, and it's actually a blue moon as well. So you have a super blue moon. It's our first one since 2018 and our last one until 2037, Sean. So, you get higher than usual high tides, also lower than usual low tides. So that's going to help increase a little bit more when it comes to this coastal flooding situation that we're going to see. But yeah, let's get into the winds here. These are sustained winds, so the winds that are constantly blowing, not gusts. So watch what happens as we go into the next 48 hours. This is now Wednesday at 8 a.m., and this is pretty much when landfall is going to happen. And according to this model, this is the European model, Cedar Key, Florida, 55 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts probably that are going to be hurricane force, so 74, 75 miles an hour. Perry, Florida, 25. But Sean, I could say this until I'm blue in the face. Track is key. You go 30 miles east, St. Petersburg's going to have some stronger winds. Cedar Key might be a little bit lower, and vice versa here. But the point is, strongest winds in the Big Bend. Then as we go into the daytime hours, some strong winds, something that can certainly, be absorbed by the buildings, but some stronger winds as we go into the day on Wednesday. And then you see those winds really peaking near Savannah around 26 miles an hour on Wednesday night. And then you see a lot of those yellows and oranges going out to sea, and it's going to stay pretty much right around that spot as we go into the next couple of days. Because, Sean, as we look at our surface setup, there's really not a lot of places for this storm to go.
Yeah, once we get past Thursday, and again, as you alluded to, and it's worth repeating, any places on the northern side of the center of circulation on the East Coast is going to have strong onshore winds. So that's still going to lead to some coastal flooding from Savannah, probably up through coastal North Carolina. But as you mentioned, once this thing does finally go offshore sometime late Thursday or Friday, the steering winds kind of just stop. So the concern here isn't so much for over this coming Labor Day weekend. It probably kind of holds a few hundred miles offshore through the weekend, but there are some indications later on next week it could wander back somewhere toward the southeast coast. So ordinarily we like to say, once it's gone, it's gone. But don't forget about the storm even after Thursday or Friday or this weekend. This is going to be one of these things that's just kind of hanging out there for a while. We think before everything is kind of closed, everything kind of closes the book on Idalia, because it's going to be with us for a while, I think, to come. And speaking of a while, it's always worth reminding people the climatology, and we are still scaling up that ladder, right, Joe?
Yeah, we're still going up the ladder, but we are going up quickly. We have been going up quickly. Peak of hurricane season just about 12 days away. So it is no surprise that we have 2 hurricanes here that we are talking about. That's what we have for this episode of Hurricane Hunt. Sean and I will be back on your screens on Wednesday. We'll give you another update here. This is going to be pretty much right as soon or right around landfall here with Idalia. So we'll have a lot to update you there. You can check us out on your favorite news website.